Well, hello, hello. We've got a conversation in progress. It's a conversation, folks. Just a conversation. Andrew's here. How you doing, Andrew?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Excellent. By way of introduction, I just want to say hello to Sarah. And damn you, what the actual fuck were you thinking dropping that video on Skeptics and Seekers and forcing me to watch it? And then causing me to have to do this goddamn podcast.
It's not a podcast.
How you doing, Sarah?
Not a podcast. Not an episode. Not a show.
I'll tell you what he's right about this. What this is therapy. It's a freaking therapy because I am pissed off. I had things that I had to do today, things that I would rather do today, and instead I watched that fucking video, and I'm doing this recording because I have no choice, because I am that kind of geek. Damn determinism. So at any rate, I just wanted to talk through the video, and Andrew, who has low impulse control, said yes. So here we are.
Right.
I'm gonna just go ahead and hit play.
So the video is just it's sort of strange. It's just William Lane Craig at his contradictory and sometimes completely incomprehensible best. So yeah, we get a little slavery, right? We get a little.
Stop! Don't even preview this piece of shit.
Oh, okay. Right. Okay, so it's only 9 minutes, right? So that means this podcast will only be 6 hours. Right.
It's not a podcast. Here we go.
Let's talk about a couple of those philosophy arguments from 101 that are constantly trotted out. I've had similar experiences. The most common one that I've heard, of course, is the problem of evil, the suggestion that how can God be good if so much evil takes place in the world? The more sophisticated version of the argument to me is not the problem of human evil, which seems pretty easily disposable, but the problem.
Stop the tape. No, I'm sorry. I wasn't even planning to stop there. It's going to be a long slog. The problem of human evil
can be easily dismissed.
Is not an easy problem to dismiss philosophically. And so he is simply not engaging with the best arguments when he says that. The problem with human evil can't be easily dismissed because it is God, the perfect one, who created the beings that could be evil. So they say the apple can't fall far from the tree. Well, God's the tree, and he's perfect, incapable of evil. One would wonder how he could even come up with the concept of evil. But, as has been discussed, we humans will, in fact, be perfected creatures in heaven. So stop and think about this for a moment. No Christian who's going to heaven will be perfect when they die. So in order to be perfect in heaven, there's the sum of their life experiences isn't enough to get them there. God's still going to have to dig in their soul and fix something in order for them to be perfect in heaven. And so if he is going to dig into the souls of people and fix them for perfection, he could have done it in the first place. We didn't need the experience of constant evil and suffering and misery to be prepared for heaven, because that's not enough preparation for heaven. If we just went to heaven the way we were when we died, heaven would be hell quickly. So no, I'm sorry. The problem of human evil is not easy, and it's not easily dismissible.
Actually, I think it is pretty easily dismissible. I take the other side of this. I think he's right. I think it's easily dismissible. I do it this way. There's no such thing as evil with a capital E. We are social creatures. We sometimes do things that are socially beneficial. We sometimes do things that are socially negative. There you go. Problem handled.
Fine, great. I was speaking theologically, but cool. Gonna be a long day.
Of natural
Yes.
evil things happening to children, a child
Yes.
with cancer. How does a good God rule over a world in which children die of natural causes, in which kids are born with Tay-Sachs, in which horrible things happen to good people?
Yes. In dealing with this problem, I think it's really important that we distinguish between what I call the intellectual problem of evil and the emotional problem of evil. There is no doubt that emotionally, the evil and suffering in the world make it very difficult to believe in God. It's a tremendous emotional obstacle. But intellectually, considered dispassionately as a philosophical problem, it's extraordinarily difficult to show that there's either any inconsistency or improbability between the existence of an all-loving, all-powerful God
Stop the
and the
tape.
evil.
I don't know why I'm saying stop the tape, because I'm the one hitting the button. Someone please psychoanalyze me. I can't let this part go. Andrew, I think you might be muted. Okay, I hear you now. I hear you.
I was coughing.
That's okay. That would have been better. Okay,
so
the intellectual, emotional thing. When I went through this the first time, I think this is the point where I first started getting mad. And this is really early in the video. This pisses me off so much. So first of all, he acknowledges that that emotionally, it really is difficult to believe in God due to the POE. Okay, if you just stop there for a moment, who invented our emotional structure? I mean, our emotions are a part of our humanity after all. And so what he is saying is, just speaking humanly, it's tough to believe in God. Thanks, William, for that. I appreciate that. That's true. You can't just dismiss the emotional component as if it doesn't matter, but he does want to do just that. Emotionally, yeah, but you're just being weak-minded. If you apply your mind, then you come up with another thing. If you just consider it dispassionately, unemotionally, is that how we are to navigate reality, completely dispassionately and unattached from this very important part of our humanity? I don't think so. But if it is, then God made a mistake by giving us a full emotional core that helps guide us and navigates us through our reality. Go ahead, Andrew.
Actually, I don't have anything. I don't have anything to add to that. I see the same problem you do. If God wanted us to be closer to Him, He could have left the world exactly as it is. Right? It's hard to navigate. The problem of evil is a difficult one to solve, and He could have just made us slightly less emotional creatures. And by doing that, it would essentially turn up the volume on intellect, right? And it would be easier to see God through a dispassionate lens. Here's the problem. For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son. Now, this is an emotional verse. It's not the end of the verse, but we all know it, so I'm not going to continue with it. This is an emotional idea that someone martyred himself for all of humanity. So what is it that God wants? Does He want us to be able to use our emotions to feel the sacrifice of Jesus, to feel the 40 lashes, to feel the crown of thorns, to put ourselves in an empathetic place with the supposed Savior of humanity? Is that what God wants? Or is William Lane Craig right, and God has given us intellect and He wants us to view this thing dispassionately? I really don't think you can have it both ways.
Agreed.
suffering in the world. The atheist would have to show that it is either impossible or improbable that God has morally sufficient reasons for permitting the natural and moral evil in the world. And how could he possibly show that? We're simply not in a position to make those kind of probability judgments.
Stop the tape. No, it's not on the atheist to counter the Christian position or to show that God has some sufficient reason or doesn't have a sufficient reason. It is the Christian responsibility, the person saying there's a God with a sufficient reason. It is the Christian responsibility to provide a sufficient reason. I know this sounds like the usual game of you said it first, so you have to back your claim, but it doesn't make any sense to say that I have to show this sort of negative about God that first I can't access. And second, I don't actually have to make a claim about. I can simply say I don't see any evidence for the Christian claim, and that is actually what I do say. So in this case, even though I sort of hate the you've got the burden of proof pillow, so you're the one that has to talk. I think in this case, William Lane Craig's he's just wrong. He has shifted the burden of proof. I think Sarah pointed that out actually in her write-up. So well done, Sarah.
Don't even mention Sarah's name. I'm still mad at her for all this. But yes, she who shall not be named had some very good points.
Do you have any thoughts there? I know that wasn't a place where you intended to stop, but
actually it was. I just
okay. All right.
I can't believe your restraint. I can't believe it took this long for you to stop the tape. So I had my finger on the button in a few places.
Well, I'm trying to honor the upfront agreement,
I know there was. I don't want to tell the audience the upfront agreement because I'm the only one who's been not keeping it.
I'll keep your secret this time, but I am a little outraged, and frankly, I'm a little annoyed with Craig's enabler here, who didn't say, "Wait a minute, that really is just sort of making the other guy do your homework for you."
Yeah, so I actually have a kind word to say about the other guy later on, assuming we get there. I would not in this place though. Furthermore, I would say I completely agree. This, of all of the things that Craig said, was just a philosophical clunker. Just one that it feels like he should wish he had back. You don't ever want to say, well, they're the ones who have to positively prove that the thing I just made up and pulled out of my ass isn't true. That's just it's a philosophical no. It's a logical and debating no. It's you failed when you go there. You've already lost when you go there. So yeah, my magical unicorn. Can I prove it? Well, not really, but can you prove that it isn't there? And can you prove that my magical unicorn doesn't have good reason to destroy the world tomorrow? No, you can't prove it because you're not in any position to see the world the way the magical unicorn sees it. You see, it's philosophical nonsense. And it should be philosophically insulting to anyone who cares about philosophy. So, right, and I tried to actually listen to this charitably. By the way, for anyone listening who thinks that I'm just venting my spleen, which I am, of course, but I did actually try to think about this in a way where maybe William Lane Craig didn't mean exactly what he said, and try to come up with something a little bit more charitable as to what he could mean. And I really don't have it. His position is that God has a sufficiently moral reason for anything that happens, anything he does. So this does a couple of things. It is the Christian acknowledging that all of the natural evil in the world, such as God getting cancer, children getting cancer, and people being wiped out by floods, and born in circumstances of utter poverty and things like that, that these are things that God, in fact, is responsible for. So that's at least an improvement. You're kind of tacitly acknowledging that God's responsible for it because you're defending God for doing it. You're saying that God has a sufficient reason for it. Now I'm going to come back to this in a minute, but it right now it's just a bald-faced claim that God has a sufficient reason for it, and then he's just turning around and saying, "Well, you can't prove that he doesn't." Well, I'm gonna take a stab at that here in a minute, but I'm gonna roll the tape here for now.
With any confidence. And so I think that the problem of evil, as difficult as it may be emotionally, intellectually, it lays a burden of proof on the shoulders of the atheist, which is so heavy that it has proved to be unsustainable.
And these days, the other argument that is brought up an enormous amount is the supposed backwardness of the Bible itself and biblical morality. This happens largely with regard to, for example, homosexual marriage. It's been brought up with regard to abortion, which I think is more, again, easily disposable, because I think there's a solid secular argument in favor of the protection of human life. But homosexual marriage is the one that most often comes up. You also hear arguments that the Bible permits slavery. So if the Bible is so wonderful, then why are there all these weird sections of the Bible where it talks about wiping peoples from the earth, where it talks about enslaving other human beings? Some things that we would certainly consider moral evils today are contemplated by the Bible and not banned by the Bible. So why is that?
Well, let me address briefly first this question of slavery. When we hear the word slavery, Ben, we think of slavery as it existed in the American South. And as you know, that is nothing like the system that existed in ancient Israel. In ancient Israel,
that's a lie. It's not a misconception. It's not a misstatement. It's not a misunderstanding of history. It is a bald-faced fuck you lie. That's what that is, because he knows better. He knows so much better than this, but that's the narrative that he's going with, because that is what he thinks is a safe narrative. Now, the other guy, is Ben Shapiro, I think he's going to push back on this later, but I just want to stop at this definitional point right now. I know that we'll jump back into this. We have a lot more to say about slavery.
If you want to read what the face of slavery was like in the Old Testament, for those of you who may not be very familiar with your Old Testament, read Exodus 21 and Leviticus 25. And if you walk away from that feeling about Old Testament slavery, which he's eventually going to call indentured servitude, if you walk away from Exodus 21, Leviticus 25, feeling like he's right, I'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, and just the opposite for me. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to ever talk to you. I don't want to give you another microphone. I don't want to give you space to breathe in the public court of ideas. So go breathe that somewhere else. Because I'm done with that. I'm done with that topic. I'm done with discussing whether racism is okay or not. I'm done with discussing whether homosexuality is okay or not. And I'm done with discussing whether biblical slavery was actually slavery and whether it was okay or not. Right. So if you do want to talk to someone about that, reasonpress.net.
That's right. Reasonpress@gmail.com. Write in, because, pick up a mic, and I'll just leave it with this. I dare you.
Yeah, and being sure to include the subject line, because David didn't want to talk to me. So, I guarantee you that'll put you at the front of the line.
All
So
right, so this is there's about to be an interesting statement here. Just before you press play, I think we're right on the edge of something that I want to tease apart that might take a minute or two. So I might ask you to stop pretty quick. I'm not positive. I don't have a perfect memory of the video.
no, I don't either. And look, I'm sorry, people. I'm the one who made the rule about stopping the tape and letting it run for 1 or 2 minutes at a time and not stopping every. And then I just forget about all that, folks. Andrew's being very, very patient with me because we both have things to do with our lives that don't involve doing this.
Hey, we're 2:58 in to 9 minutes and 49 seconds. So doing okay. But,
That's good.
like I said, 5 more hours.
3 more. I thought that was not, we could condense it to 3, but that's fine.
Optimist.
Here we go. We will be back here, people. There's just definitionally, though, it's important to understand this is definitionally not true. It's untrue. It's a lie. There was indentured servitude. That's true. That was not the same thing, not synonymous with slavery proper even back then. In fact, in one of the passages, can't remember which one, Deuteronomy, can't be bothered, Deuteronomy 25, maybe I can't be bothered looking it up right now. You can look it up. One of the passages, the verses back to back, described the two things. One was a description of good service. One was a description of chattel slavery. By the way, you hear the term chattel slavery, people. Look it up. Chattel just means ownership. Okay, chattel slavery means you own a person like property. Many times in the Bible, it specifically, directly, explicitly says you own this person as your property. And you can pass this person down to your children because they are your property. That is the single definition of chattel slavery. All the rest isn't even a part of the definition of chattel slavery. That is chattel slavery. That's what it is. That's all it is. And that is exactly how God describes it.
If we stepped outside the boundaries of slavery for a moment, you think, oh, but wait a minute, there's this God, and maybe we're misunderstanding him. And okay, well, let me try to test it another way then. This is the same God who said, take all of the young women who haven't had sex as war prizes.
I noticed Craig didn't bring up that example. So.
Okay, you are dangerously close to me just going after what he said on Unbelievable, and I don't want to.
No.
But here is my actual point. This has to do with something that's going on over on the Skeptics and Seekers boards right now. So if you're listening or watching for the first time, that's skepticsandseekers.squarespace.com, and just click on whatever conversation happens to be in the top left corner of the page. That's the most current board. But right now, the current conversation has to do with progressive Christianity. And I have some responses that I may or may not get around to replying to, because here's the problem. I don't actually care whether progressive Christianity is true or not. The vast majority of people that call themselves Christians accept the Old Testament largely as it's written. Not all of it, but there are far too many who accept it as a way to live their lives, or as something to try to justify. So slavery back in the Old Testament, well, God did it for a reason. If you're a progressive Christian and you think the Old Testament is full of shit, well, I congratulate you. Here's my challenge to you. Go talk to other Christians.
Yeah.
I largely don't care. I just don't care if you have some way to dismiss the Old Testament, to make your God a kinder, friendlier, supernatural being. If you think he created the universe, he could have done something about the Old Testament.
Andrew
Okay,
and I are in
sorry.
a very similar place. I don't believe in progressive Christianity as in thinking that it paints a more real picture of reality. I think it's also fantasy, but it's a better fantasy. And if there are two candidates running for office, and they're both quote unquote Christians, and one of them is a conservative nut job Christian, and the other one's a progressive nut job Christian, I'll take the progressive.
Sure.
I don't even care what the rest of their platform is. So that's
Right.
that's good enough for me. I want the progressive to win, and so just for practical reasons. But yeah, we're getting back into the video. Sorry about the digression. Not sorry. So much about the slavery thing that just triggers me. Lane Craig says. It's not everybody knows. So by the way, whenever someone starts off with everybody knows, beware, because this is often used as a fog, a smoke screen to cover up something, and just to kind of plant the idea that this is broadly known, so you don't have to question it, because everybody knows it. And if you question it, then you must be a freak. So he says everybody knows that the slavery in the South, the slavery in the Bible wasn't anything like the slavery in the South. I have made this challenge many times. Please write in and tell me exactly how it differed. How you think it differed. How do you think slavery in the South different from the Bible? The only response I've ever actually gotten from a Christian is that, oh, well, slavery was only based on whether you're a black person or not. And so that's what made it bad. Really? That's what made it bad? That's what made it bad. So if it was based on, say, whether a person was tall or short, that would have been okay? What the hell are you talking about? If it was based on the fact that the people were Syrian as opposed to, some other nationality, would that be okay? Because it was largely based on that in the, okay, is this a stop the tape moment for you?
No, sorry.
Okay.
But I will say this.
So what the people don't
skeptics
know is that Andrew used that sound and threatened to use that as the stop the tape sound before the recording. And so I thought he was giving me the hook.
It was an accident. I was
dreadful sound. Go ahead. I'll take the hook. That's fine.
It was just Diet Pepsi. Oh, look, I told David said he doesn't want to talk to you. As you've just learned, he wants to talk to you. Really, that's at skepticsandseekers.gmail.com.
Don't write me. Don't write me. Don't. I'll tell you. It is. Reason Press. gmail.com. That is my new email address. I don't want to fuck with this shit anymore. So
not forward RC, Jack. I know. Okay. So look, I didn't mean to interrupt, and I think you were.
I needed to be interrupted. So here we go. We're hitting it.
There was no social safety net.
Oh God! Stop the tape. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, we got 5 seconds down the road.
There was no social safety net. Oh, I know it's coming. Okay, I know that you have a lot to say here.
No.
I'm going to give one paragraph.
I don't have a lot. That's not how it's going to go. I'm going to take the first 30 seconds, and then I'm going to give you the rest of the time here, because I know you have more to say than I do. Folks, are you familiar with the practice of gleaning? Gleaning was the practice of the edges of the fields that they had, where they grew things or corn and their crops and so forth. People who were poor essentially could glean their fields. They could take up to a certain amount of those crops for free, and it wouldn't be stealing. This was a part of the social safety net God built into the system. There was, in fact, a social safety net. In fact, that was one of the better parts of Judaism, a religion that I utterly despise. But that was actually one of the good parts. Apparently, William Lane Craig has forgotten about that. There were also things like offerings for people who were in poverty. There were free will offerings. It wasn't just sacrifices and things like that. So there was a lot of safety net built into the culture. And for William Lane Craig to say that in Judaism there was no safety net is just him either once again lying to you because he knows you don't read your Bible, or he hasn't read his. And I don't believe it. I don't believe the latter.
I don't either. And this is just figure out which cup the ball is under for me, because this God that William Lane Craig is talking about right now is the God of the Old Testament, not the God of the New Testament. And the God of the Old Testament had a social safety net whenever in the hell he wanted to, whenever he wanted one. All he had to do was pour manna from heaven. He had a social safety net for years, according to the text. So what did he do? Children of Israel wandering around in the wilderness, couldn't find enough to eat, and God just poured food on their heads. So what is it that later on allows this God who doesn't want people to starve in the wilderness? What changes later where he says, oh, well, sorry, you guys look like you're sort of in a pickle. Maybe the right way out now is not for me to give you food. No, it looks like a better solution is for you to own each other.
Yeah, that's the thing. This is okay. We're actually about to get there. We're about to get there. There will be a stop tape moment. I'm so sorry.
Sponsored by the state. There was no poverty program. So if a man got himself into a situation where he couldn't pay his debts, he could keep his family together and retain his self-respect by selling himself as an indentured servant to his creditor until he could work off his debts, and then he would have to be set free. After 7 years, he had to be set free in any case. So this was really a form.
In any case, except for the big exception that he's just kind of missing. So how does a man keep his family together? I'm sorry, for those who haven't read your Bible, which is 90% of Christians, if a slave, if a master wanted to keep a slave past those 7 years, say like forever, he could give that slave a wife. And he would probably do that fairly early on in the process. Give the slave a wife. The slave has some kids with the wife. Now they're family, still a slave. But after 7 years, the slave would have to leave, and the wife and kids would not be his. It would be the master's. So the way the slave would get to keep his family is to agree to be a slave, property of this man forever. That's how they did it.
The thing that's killing me is the very notion. Okay, fine. Let's just pretend. Let's just pretend for some moment, like in some possible world, I could sell myself to someone as a slave and keep my self-respect. Let's just pretend for a moment that that's a real thing. Let's just so it's Sarah's rainbows and unicorns slavery. Let's just pretend it is. Now, I really mean this, and I don't want the hyperbole and polemic to take away from the following points. I'm going to tone down. I'm going to ask you all to listen carefully to the next question. Do you really think it is reasonable to say that you can keep your self-respect not only by selling yourself into indentured servitude because of your debt, which may in some cosmic oatmeal cookie sense not be impossible, but are you really saying that you can keep your self-respect by selling your wife and children or your husband and children? into servitude to pay your debt. Now, it is not my fault that that is what he said, and all you have to do is rewind, like a second and a half, because we thoughts pretty often. You don't have to rewind far.
You
To
also
hear
don't
William
have to.
Lane Craig say
You also don't
Okay,
have to
go
fast
ahead.
forward far. So I'm gonna hold my water and for just a minute.
Of indentured servanthood. It wasn't slavery as we think of that term. This was actually an anti-poverty program. And in some respects, I think it's better than what we have
Stop
in modern Western
the
culture,
tape.
which
That's all I wanted to get to.
it's better.
It's better.
better.
See, it's
better.
slavery, biblical slavery. It's better than you know, life in the modern world. And we have actually backward ideas about debt. Bring back the debtor's prison, man. Because William Lane Craig, looking at the scales and weighing the options, he's got on one side of the scale debt. Let's say your college debt.
Tuition.
Yeah. Your student loan. That's what I was trying to think of. Yeah, your student loan in one of those things. And then you've got slavery on the other thing. And he weighs those in the balance and finds slavery better than carrying the student loan debt. That's one fucked up individual. I don't even think he believes it. Here's the thing. Even if you think of it, just forget about all of the other things about Old Testament slavery that we know existed. Let's pretend that it's the William Lane Craig version of it, and that's all we're talking about. Let's pretend that. That's still not better. That's not better. That's terrible. This is why there's a reason why no one in the free, civilized world does that.
So let me ask you a question, Dave. I want to know the answer to this. And again, I'm being serious. This is not hyperbole. It's not funny. If the slavery of the Old Testament, the kinder, gentler, friendlier slavery, the rainbows and unicorn slavery, is better.
I think that we should call it Sarah's slavery. She deserves that.
I think I'm going to let you do that
for having to talk about this subject.
No, I'm going to let you do that. So here's what I want to know: if this is a better way, why don't we have it today? I mean, so we're not the only kind of economic system in the world. The U.S. free market is not the only kind of economic system. Why don't we see, as a for instance, societies that have great colleges and universities, where the children leave their advanced education in their roughly high school years, and they go off to college for 4 or 6 or 8 years, and when they graduate at whatever level they're capable of graduating, we see them as indentured servants for 10 years to pay off their education, and then they go on for the next 20 or 30 years in some adult occupation. If this is a kinder, gentler, better way to do things, why isn't that model somewhere now?
Why isn't there some Christian, even a crazy one, out hammering that message? Bring
You said
back
that like
slavery.
It's a rare animal.
Well, why isn't someone preaching bring back slavery? William Lane Craig doesn't even preach that. He's saying it here because he feels like he's in a safe interview. But to say with a straight face that even the watered down type of slavery that he's talking about is better than the system we have now is to lose all credibility with yourself. You're just a clown at that point. you know, the moment that Hugh Ross lost all credibility was Little Green Men, Lights in the Sky.
and Little Green Men.
Yeah. Yeah, we're done. We're done talking about Hugh Ross's credentials, his gravitas, his you know, work in the field. We're done. He's a nut job. When William Lane Craig pronounces that slavery is a better system, we're done. And you should be done too. Unfortunately, we're not done with this video. Here we go.
Destroys families, ruins people's self-respect because they're not working. Whereas in ancient Israel, a man retained his self-respect. He worked for an income. He paid his debts. He kept his family together. And that, to call that slavery, is just a gross misrepresentation. Now, the first thing you mentioned, I've forgotten.
Homosexual marriage.
Yeah,
Same-sex.
okay.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just stop the tape for a moment. To call it slavery is a gross misrepresentation. Every translator in every language called it slavery.
It's called slavery in the ESV. The ESV has quite an interesting translation history. There are actually two committees that translated the ESV. Hundreds of biblical scholars, if I understand it correctly. And the two committees were a translation committee, and they found experts from all over the world that were specialists in particular times and places and languages. Right, they did the very best they could. English Standard Version, folks, the ESV. And after these specialists were done with their translations, the translations were done blind, if you will, and then it was handed off to a verification committee composed of separate specialists in the same areas with the same kinds of credentials and language specialties and cultural specialties, etc. The ESV should be pretty good. It should be pretty good.
Yeah, I mean,
You know what it says? Slavery.
right. But this is a tactic of the Christians to pretend like, you know, it's the atheists who are calling it slavery. Like they're making up some words and putting them in God's mouth. We're just reading the Bible in every language.
But here's my challenge. If you're a progressive Christian and you're listening and you think I'm wrong, I don't want to talk to you in this case. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to get together with your progressive friends. I mean this. I'm not being hyperbolic. This is not polemicism. I leave that to David. I'm not good at it. This is what I want you to do. In fact, I beg you to. In fact, I will host your website free of charge. I will host your email free of charge. I will give you every opportunity. In fact, I'll contribute to this project. I'm not kidding. I will pay money. If you think the Bible is wrong as written, let's get your progressive friends together. And I want you to rewrite it. I want you to make it say what it should say. And I will help, I will pour my life into your project. And let's just get it done. Because I'm tired of the translation controversy from progressive Christians. If you think the Bible should say something else, then let's get that job done.
Yeah, well, so I'm going to open Andrew's project up to the conservatives here, because if you think that the Bible is the Word of God, but it's misrepresented by all the people who, you know, wrote it, but you've got a better grasp on what it should say. You know, join the project. I'll chip in a nickel.
Here's the thing. I have challenged for years on handicapped miracles. Let's have some real miracles that are verifiable, right? I'm not going to get any email over this either. reasonpress@gmail.com. And if you're a conservative and you think the Bible's wrong, you know, that's skeptics and seekers.
Nope.
.gmail. WLC.com?
Mm-mm.
David says no. Look, I am not kidding.
I don't want to hear it.
I am not kidding. Let's get your Bible written. Okay, now I'm sorry. Go take
All right,
it.
here we go.
Take it
All right.
away.
I think we're gonna make it through a couple of minutes here. So there we go.
With respect
Okay.
to some of these other moral questions, I think we need to remember the first premise of the moral argument. If there is no God, then there are no objective moral values and duties. Everything is socioculturally relative. So who's to say?
I'm sorry.
Bullshit.
Yeah, I got it. I'm so sorry. This is a tactic of really bad debaters. This is the tactic that they use when they're losing the argument. And you can hear it from, a wide variety of apologists, from Jonathan McClatchy on. And the argument is just very puerile, that if you reject objective morality as I define it as coming from my God, then you have no basis of morality, and therefore you have no basis to say that anything's wrong. Well, let's look at the first premise of the moral argument, that the idea that morality can only come from a God. That's fucking wrong. We have rejected that premise and disproved it and smashed it many times. There are many foundations for moral theory, and we have offered them many times with many words from many directions. And to go on saying that there's only one way to look at morality, and that's through my God, and if you don't, then you have no basis for moral theory. You are just a goddamn fool. William Lane Craig is a goddamn fool.
One of the things that he's doing here that bothers me, he's not always this way. So I will give credit where credit is due. Sometimes William Lane Craig engages with the best philosophy from the other side that he can. But in this case, he's not even trying. He's not even trying. So humanists, not atheists, not all atheists are humanists, so don't make that mistake, but humanists are starting to uncover, we do know some things that are objectively bad for humans. The sort of trivial version of that is, who would tell their children to drink battery acid? Well, no one, right? Because it is objectively bad for you. So there are plenty of people who found their moral system on that kind of objective data, right? And that's perfectly fine. There's another group of us who say, well, everything we think is subjective. Why? Because it comes from a mind, which is one definition for subjective, right? Things that come from a mind. And as long as we can agree on a starting point, then with that starting point, we can assess what moves would be best from the starting point that we have, like human thriving, right? And so if we can agree on human thriving, that's a good starting point, then we can make objective moves to increase human thriving. Now, it doesn't really matter to me, the purpose of this conversation, whether you start with objective data as your foundation or whether you're a subjectivist that starts and uses objective data later on. I don't care whether you're an early objectivist or a late objectivist. I don't care. The point here that I'm trying to make, and that I hope you will all hear, is that William Lane Craig is not engaging at all with even low-hanging ideas from the other side. He has hand-waved it all away. And if you take anything from what I have said today, this is the place where you should ignore everything he has to say. He's not engaging with the other side.
He's not engaging honestly with his own side because really the bulk of this argument, whenever you hear a Christian trot this out, is why I say this, they usually bring this out when they've lost the debate, is what they want to say is you, skeptic, don't even get to have an opinion on what's bad because you don't accept God. So you don't even have a voice in this conversation. So therefore I win because you can't say anything, because you can't say that anything is bad. You fucking goddamn lying fool. It does shut down the conversation in one way, because I have identified that person as a person unworthy of conversation. They are simply unworthy. They should be canceled by whatever cancel culture exists. But I've said before that the only problem I have with cancel culture is it doesn't cancel enough. So there you go. All right, we're gonna get through a couple of minutes.
We're halfway, folks.
No, we're it's seriously. The show begins now. We're gonna a new commitment. It will be at least 10 seconds before I stop the tape.
The new covenant. Okay, we're doing better.
Because the old one was shit. It didn't work out.
Hey, that the moral values of a society that discriminates against people and oppresses people is worse than one which is liberal and tolerant. We just sort of assume that the liberal values are the ones that would be objective, when in fact they're just as relativistic as any of the other ones on atheism. So if we need God.
I'm so sorry. We're not assuming, we're not just assuming that liberal values are better in some subjective, relativistic, let's just take our best guess and wave our fairy wand kind of way. We have thousands, hundreds of thousands of years of history and evolution to look at. We have tried everything as humans. We've tried throwing babies in volcanoes. We've tried oppressing women at a horrendous rate. We've tried warring with the neighboring tribes and taking their scalps and wearing them as souvenirs. We've tried it all, and we know what works and what doesn't work. It's not just that we're progressive and we hate God and we're just taking some guess that's opposed to God. We can show the experimental data of what has been good for humanity, what has been bad for humanity, and that's how we progress. It's not just some subjective dreamscape that makes us go toward certain social goals and away from others.
I am tempted to leave this with two words, but it's going to be impossible. The two words that I want to say here, and I want to leave it, feel free to stop listening to me after these two words. Kabul, Afghanistan. Okay. Having said that, does anyone really want to stand up other than William Lane Craig and his enabler? Do any of you out there really want to stand up and say, oh yeah, maybe we should give that oppression thing another try? That sounds pretty good. Those liberal ideas of letting people be as free and as unencumbered as possible, because I know people think that's a conservative idea. But not against William Lane Craig's background, boys and girls. He thinks oppression might be okay. I'm not responsible for it. I'm aware of it. You can just hit rewind and listen to it for yourself. What he is actually saying is maybe it'd be okay to give oppression another try. You want to know what post-truth society looks like? Do you want to know what a post-truth society looks like? It looks like a man who has gained some amount of respect in his life. being willing to stand up in public and say, we could give that oppression thing another try.
Yeah. I do have a kind of a set speech that I want to make, but I'm going to save it for what I know is coming. So I'm going to leave it right there. All right. 30 seconds. We're going to make it 30 seconds. Even if you say stop the tape before 30 seconds, I am going to soldier on.
I'm going to hold my water.
God to be the anchor point for objective moral values and duties, we cannot escape the question when thinking of moral right and wrong, well, what does God think of this? And if God proscribes something, it seems to me that's entirely within his right. If God were to say, thou shalt not eat beans, or thou shalt not eat pork, that would be our moral duty, and we should obey it. That is his prerogative as the moral lawgiver and the supreme good. And so if God says, my plan for human sexuality is heterosexual marriage, that's his prerogative. And there is no basis for calling that, I think, into question.
So let's talk about the evolution of morality.
Okay, I'm sorry. Folks, I had a little bit of a brain infarction a minute ago. I'm okay now. Much better. Much better. That aneurysm had to pop at some point.
So what he has just said is taking those poor little girls as war prizes, enslaving people in the Old Testament, even if it wasn't the kinder, gentler Sarah slavery. Okay, sorry, I was going to do that. It was too easy.
It's been done now.
The
moment that Brian with an I writes Sarah slavery, it's been done.
Okay, so here's what gets me. You can think. Now look, you guys are misunderstanding William Lane Craig. He's not actually saying, you can be a William Lane Craig progressivist. And sorry, that wasn't nice, was it? You can think that I misunderstand William Lane Craig, fine. But what he just said, even if he's not saying actually the kind of general slavery is fine, even if you think I'm wrong about that, what he did just say was, if that's what I said, it would be okay, because it's God's prerogative.
Yeah, if God says don't eat beans, then eating beans is evil. It's a direct DCT, divine command theory type of thing, which is in fact among the most evil of moral philosophies you can get. Why is it right? Because the king said so. There is really no way to get underneath that, by the way. So I actually do believe that is philosophical bedrock. With that argument, Christians try to, pin it on God's nature and so forth, so that they can get out from under it. But actually, once you have bowed to divine command theory, it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a human or a God or an alien. You have accepted, for whatever reason, that there is no more research to do. They said it, so it's true. So you can't even ask the question, well, wait a minute, God, we've been eating beans for thousands of years, ever since we were able to grow beans. Why are beans all of a sudden wrong? You can't even ask the question. It just is. It just is. You just have to orient your brain to, now that's the new wrong. And if God says, kill your fucking kid for me, well, you pick up your knife and you kill your kid. You don't even get to question why you kill your kid. Why you say he's been a good kid. He's never cursed me. He does all his chores. Kill your kid. Okay. That's divine command theory. That's it. That's what it is. And so he says that for everything, what you should do is just ask, what would God do? What would God think about this? Well, you know what? There's so many problems with that. We'll do a whole show on that. But here's one. You don't have a fucking clue what God would do. You have no idea what he would do. You have no idea what he thinks about anything right now. So, even if you read your Bible and knew it, which you don't, and so stop pretending like you do, You have no idea. But with regard to homosexuality, if you want to ask yourself, what would God do? He'd say, kill them. Kill them all. They're bad for society. We know what God would do. We rejected that for good reason. I don't give a fucking clue or a fucking care what your God would do in any given situation. That is not how I determine what is good. It's certainly not how I determine what should be legislated. But if you think in those terms, what would God do in any given situation? I'm not hiring you. I won't let you move in next to me as my neighbor. I won't let you watch my kids. I wouldn't let you run for dog catcher. You stupid fool. I'm sorry. There's another aneurysm. Anyway, here we go. I need a doctor.
And I want to go back to slavery for just a second. So it is true that Hebrew enslavement, that Jewish enslavement of others is really more indentured servitude. I mean, there's a whole section in, I believe it's Numbers or Leviticus, I think it's Leviticus maybe, where it speaks to specifically about the slave who doesn't want to leave, and you're supposed to pierce his ear on the doorpost as a punishment for him not wanting to leave and all of this. But by the same token, enslavement of people who are not inside the Israelite, inside the Jewish kind of tradition, that's not proscribed. So the idea of war captives is obviously taken into account and not banned. So certain things are banned in the Bible, certain things are not banned. Now, the way that biblical believers have practiced.
Okay, I'll just pause right there for a moment. This is the one place where I'm giving Shapiro some credit, because he's going back to slavery to try to deal with one of the gaping clunkers of William Lane Craig, to describe all biblical slavery as just indentured servitude. It's just a bad job, or just a job, just employment. Shapiro clearly does not know his Bible, because the scene that he's talking about is not, in fact, how it goes. This was not about, oh, slave doesn't want to leave, and so you take him to the doorpost and pierce his ear as a punishment. What the fuck Bible is this guy reading? That's not how. That's nothing to do. That is so opposite of what the situation was. But
maybe the progressives do already have their own Bible. Maybe
I'm gonna let it go, because he's only a Christian and he has no idea what it says. So that's fine. What he is going back on and saying, okay, but there are other kinds of slavery. He kind of works around that. So we got the indentured servitude, as if, by the way, the only kind that the Jews practice were indentured servitude. And then there's this other slavery, for other people, the other people, that was war prices, war crime, war things like that. And so he's kind of asking William Lane Craig to go back and rehabilitate that a little bit. And I just wanted to point that out as we see what WLC has to say.
Over time is that very early in the church's history, they're already starting to eliminate slavery, although not for people who are captured. And then over time, the West is the first place to eliminate slavery altogether, specifically citing the sections of the Bible that talk about human freedom and the innate value of every human being. So is that an evolution of morality, or is that a realization of a fundamental principle that was originally given to people who couldn't necessarily understand the full extent of the principle?
Oh, I think it's the latter, and I love the way you put it. I think that's nicely put. Jesus said something very much like this with respect to Old Testament regulations on divorce. They asked him whether or not it was lawful to divorce a woman for any reason, and Jesus said, Moses allowed you to write a certificate of divorce, but it was not so from the beginning. And he cites then the creation story of Genesis, of Adam and Eve, and said, what God has put together, and let not man put asunder. So what Jesus was saying there was that the law of Moses was a temporary prescription accommodating the hardness of heart of the people at the time, but it didn't represent the perfect will of God for human marriage, which was grounded in the creation story.
So how exactly do we determine when we have moved beyond the biblical text in terms of the evolution of that morality? When are we fulfilling a broader goal that was kind of held back by temporary constraints? And when are we moving utterly beyond it? And again, here I'm thinking of same-sex marriage. So when it comes to same-sex marriage, the argument is now being made by people in liberal churches, including Pete Buttigieg, who's running for president, that basically Jesus was seeking equal respect for everyone. He cared about the least of these, and the prescriptions on homosexuality were really more, and homosexual activity were not eternal precepts, but were really attempting to crack down on the promiscuity of the time, or they were temporary expedients.
Yeah, I think that's clearly false. When you look at these regulations, both in the Old Testament and then they're repeated in the New Testament in the strongest terms in Romans chapter 1, there's no doubt that Paul is thinking of this as a moral law that has abiding significance. And it's grounded again, I think, in the creation story, that God has created human sexuality, He's created man and woman in such a way that the fulfillment of that relationship will take place within the safety and security of a heterosexual marriage. And that outside of that,
Okay, all right. Just wait.
I was gonna stop it about a minute ago for your sake, because I know you wanted to.
I am okay. Look, we are now at. I've been good. I've been good. I'm checking the time, folks. We're now at 9 minutes and 28 seconds.
This is almost over.
9 minutes and 49 seconds. Sorry that I couldn't wait the last 20 seconds. Here's the problem.
It was never gonna make it because I was gonna stop it myself.
So the only way for sex to be safe is for it to happen in a heterosexual marriage. I don't like trying to put on the hat of women who have been abused. Not a woman. I haven't been abused in a marriage. So here's okay. Look, we can leave all of that behind and just ask a much easier question. Are we really going to defend the notion that the only way for sex to be safe, the only way in the universe for sex to be safe, is in a heterosexual marriage?
Right.
No,
So
nobody thinks that.
all those
Not even
Muslim
the
women
Christians.
are not safe. They're not safe. They're married. They're not safe. I've known women.
And by the way, there are plenty of women in Christian marriages who are not safe.
Oh, yes, I know more women in Christian marriages than out of Christian marriages who are not safe in their marriage.
By the way, it'd be cool if the names of the politicians being discussed could be gotten right. The whole thing here. Well, it's rare, but I am somewhat speechless here.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and plow through the rest of this. I do have a piece that I want to say is a little bit out of place. I think that I want to say it at the end. So those of you who stuck with this this long, I really appreciate this. This was not a planned podcast, people. This is not a podcast. Conversation between two friends who are pissed off. We would have had this conversation anyway. We just turned on the record button.
But we do welcome you along and thank you for listening.
Yeah. Yeah, I listened to this recording this morning at breakfast, and then I called Andrew and said, "Okay, one time offer. I am going to hit record and rant about this thing. Have you seen it? Yep. You want to be in it? Yep. That was it. That is our preparation. So uh, we'll do the last bit of this here, and thanks for coming along.
Sexual activity is not to be indulged in. And this is a law that God has given us for our good. So I do not think that this is capable of simply being relativized to time and culture.
I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Ben Shapiro.
Okay, that's all you get. Can't be relativized like time and culture. So what of the Sauls and Davids and Solomons who had up to 700 wives and Lord knows how many concubines? I mean, past 1,000, who can count? That sounds like it's being relativized to me. And furthermore, those things weren't things that the evil humans did and God endured. According to God's prophet to David, God gave him all of those women and would have given him more. So yeah, I don't. That's just bullshit. And once again, it's the kind of thing that Christians say to, or Christian teachers say to the people in the pews who don't read their Bibles. And you can only fall for this if you haven't read the damn thing. So that's that's not my final word. But Andrew, did you want to kind of close off that thought? I'll even give you the last word if you want, because my closing thought isn't that long.
I don't have a whole lot left to say here. The God of the Christian Bible is the maker, the sustainer of the universe according to that way of thinking. I will say a thing that I have said before here, and that I say on Still Unbelievable from time to time. And that is this. The Christian God could have any kind of creatures that he wanted if he were all powerful. And those creatures wouldn't have to be robots. If he can manufacture free will, and if some of those creatures with free will can turn out the way he wants, although they win their golden ticket to heaven, then he surely knows the secret recipe for the people that will win the golden ticket to heaven. And he could simply make as many of those as he wanted. But it is so much worse than that. If the Christian God were even a good innovator, if he were just as good as some of the best in humanity, he would be able to look at a pattern over time and say, hey, you know what? Got a lot of broken souls out there. This kind of making process isn't working out particularly well. It's resulting in more failures than I like. And this other process, this one where people are winning their golden tickets to heaven, well, that process is working better. Let me refine the world just a little bit so I get more golden ticket winners. But the story that the Christians want us to believe is that there is this all-powerful God who is also so hapless that he can't just have more of the kinds of souls that he wants. And in the worst version of Christianity, he just makes a pile of people for destruction. And folks, I beg you, run away.
So there was a famous speech. In fact, it was a debate between Sam Harris and William Lane Craig. and you can find the clips everywhere, the whole video. But Harris made one of the finest 10-minute speeches I've ever heard. And it was a formative speech in my own activism. But in that time that he was speaking, he mentioned something to the effect of a failure to empathize deeply. I think the Christian position that William Lane Craig presents here is an utter failure of empathy. I think it's a failure of a lot of things, also a failure of logic, it's a failure of philosophy, but I think even more to the point, it's a failure of empathy. And here's how. So he talks about God having a morally justified reason for all of the suffering. This is strictly utilitarianism. And that's a terrible moral philosophy. It's utilitarianism. So no matter what evil a person inflicts, if there's some good that can be better than the evil that comes from it, then it's okay. In other words, the ends justifies the means. That is a kind of a short form of utilitarianism. We all reject that. So this is the first part of it. And when Craig says that we are not in a position to know if all of the moral evil, the natural evil that God is responsible for is worth it or not. He is assuming that there could be an outcome that would make it worth it. I do not assume that. And I think he would have to show that there could be an outcome that would make it worth it. And I encourage all of the Christians to try. If you want to jump into the comments and throw something out there, what you think would make it worth it. But let's just go ahead and do this thought experiment. Let's say that every human being that has ever been born, that's ever lived, that ever will live, will have some heaven-like experience that is infinite joy and bliss for infinite time, at the cost of one human being having ultimate torment, the ultimate hellish experience for infinite time. Just one person, just sacrifice one innocent person, and we can all be happy forever. Is that worth it? If you think it's worth it, fuck you. It's not worth it. That may be the easy way out. Maybe some God presents you with that kind of option, but that's an evil God. Frankly, if that God could do it that way, he could do it without the one person suffering. So you shouldn't take the deal. It's an evil God. He's going to fuck you over eventually. The fact that he would come up with a scenario that way. But no, it wouldn't be worth it. And I say it's the easy way out because what we should say is, you know what? We'll keep working at it. We'll find a better way to bring everyone along without having to cynically sacrifice any innocent people. That's what we should be trying for. We shouldn't take the deal. And so if Christians are thinking to themselves, well, all of the suffering that's going on right now is going to be worth it because I'm going to be in heaven and that's going to be great. You are a monster. You should not want that. You should be repulsed by that idea. And you are failing to empathize with the kind of suffering that it is costing you, that it is costing the world. You look at the suffering that was implied in the Bible. I don't believe most of it ever happened, to be perfectly frank. But the writers of the Bible say that it did, and they want you to believe that it did. If you just look at that and just take that as one part of history and say, well, okay, all of that suffering had to happen, but it's worth it for us to go to heaven. No, it's not. It's already not worth it. But we don't have to look at some fantasy book, at some fantasy villain. You can just look at what's happening today. Right now, there are entire villages of little girls and little boys who the best thing that is going to happen to them today, the best thing that will happen to them is that they will only be raped 10 times instead of 50. That's the best thing that's going to happen for them. But you don't see that. You don't want to think about that. You just kind of put it in a cloud, and whatever bad things have to happen to make your heaven good is okay. You have a utter failure of empathy when that is your theology, when that is your philosophy, when that is your worldview, when that is your life's goal. And you can just gloss over the kids in St. Jude right now fighting for their lives in pain and misery so that you can have another martini in heaven. What the fuck is wrong with you?
So I have said this before too. This is my closing paragraph. Dave, you can have it after this.
Well, I'm done. Hey.
There's an idea. Not all Christians think this is the case, but there are a great many who read the New Testament and think that Christians are the salt that leavens the lump, that God continues this world in the state that it's in, hoping for one more person to come to a knowledge of Jesus as Savior so that they can win their golden ticket. I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm just shortcutting the whole salvation conversation. If you don't like the golden ticket, insert whatever phrase makes it more powerful. But the idea is that God allows this old world to spin around and circle the sun in hopes that one more person will just agree that Jesus is Lord and Savior. But those same people very often think that there are more people being lost every day to hell than those who will achieve heaven. If you're not one of those people, thank you very much. I'm not talking to you. Here's my problem. If this is a numbers game, and we're going to have more people in hell than we have in heaven, I'll tell you what an act of real sacrifice is. Fighting against that God to shorten this world as quick as possible, to have as few souls in hell as possible. And so if your God is a God that is allowing the world to spin for one more soul while he's losing 9, or while he's losing 2, or if he's losing another 1, real salvation is being willing to give up heaven to keep someone else out of hell. The Jesus sacrifice wasn't a sacrifice.
All right, folks, the comments can be found at skepticsandseekers.squarespace.com. The emails can be sent to reasonpress@gmail.com. .com. And Sarah, we love you. Here's the thing. I see your posts. I read them. I see them all. But this goes for all of you. I see all of your posts. I don't comment on all of them, but I see them. Okay, I appreciate them. I wrestle with a lot of the ideas. Sometimes I jump in when I have a minute. But I feel like Sarah in particular is baiting me every time she posts, and especially when she puts up a video. Tyler is too. They're just baiting me to see when I'm gonna lose it. Well, Sarah won the sweepstakes this time. I'll try to do better the next time. So there you go. I apparently can easily be baited. With that said, I appreciate you, Andrew, coming along. I almost on impulse invited Darren to join us because he also has low impulse control. But the show would have been, a third longer than what it is now. So, sorry about that. Darren, you'll get the call the next time I get baited into one of these things. And I clearly have low impulse control because I watch all of the videos that you guys put up, and I read the resources because apparently I'm determined to do so. So I won't pretend that there will never be a next time, but until next time, see you guys. And,
Reactions.
stop recording. All right. Okay, see you guys.